We have a correction to make. A week ago tonight, at exactly this time 1 week ago, I led this show with something that I now know to be wrong. Here is me being wrong. He vaulted over the White House fence. He ran all the way across the White House lawn. He got all the way to the north portico doors of the White House. He then opened the doors and went inside the building and was not apprehended until he was already inside the White House. Now, if you really want to parse it, technically you could say that what I said there was accurate. But honestly, what I just described there is not at all what really happened in that incident in the news. Late this afternoon, early this evening, there was just a stunning development in what was already a pretty shocking story. And I know the word shocking is overused in the news business, but there is something shocking about this, particularly what we learned about it today. I mean, it's one thing when you see the president of the United States out working a rope line or doing an event in front of a large crowd, and you think, oh, the president might be taking a little bit of a risk in terms of his safety in order to be out among the people. But it is another thing altogether to realize that when the president is at home in what is supposedly the most secure building in the country, he's not actually being well protected, nor is his family. This story is almost impossible to believe. It was hard to believe before today. Tonight, it is almost impossible. And the news that we got today, it starts with an incident this summer, July 19th in Wythe County, Virginia. A 42-year-old man in an SUV led police on a high-speed chase, including along Interstate 81 in that part of Virginia. When police did finally catch the guy and they pulled him over, he had 11 guns in his SUV, 5 handguns, 2 shotguns, at least one of which was sawed off, which is illegal, and also 4 rifles, some of which were fitted with high-power scopes, and one of which was fitted with 2 legs of a tripod, essentially a sniper setup. The man in the SUV did have some advanced weapons training. He had served multiple combat tours in Iraq, manning a .50 caliber machine gun. He was retired from the Army. He had been dealing with some mental health challenges since returning home. Some of them may have been either caused by or aggravated by post-traumatic stress, for which he'd been diagnosed. Virginia State Police arrested the man in Wythe County, Virginia in July. They charged him for that high-speed chase. They also charged him for having the sawed-off shotgun, because that's an illegal weapon. They took all of his 11 guns that were in that vehicle into custody for safekeeping. And they did eventually release him on bond. But when they did, they contacted the Secret Service up in Washington, D.C. Because in addition to the sniper-style, sniper-rigged rifle with the scope and the bipod, and all the other rifles, and the shotguns, including the illegal shotgun and the 5 handguns, they also found in his SUV a map of Washington, D.C., with the location of the White House marked on that map in pen. Obviously, possessing a map like that is not itself a crime, but when you've got a map like that, and you've got 11 guns, and you're not all that far from the White House, and you're being released on bond, it does seem like, if you're in law enforcement, that might be worth a call to the Secret Service. So the Virginia State Police called. Virginia State Police have confirmed that they notified the Secret Service about this arrest, about 42-year-old Omar Gonzalez, and their arrest of him with all those weapons in July. Virginia State Police told them. Apparently, the Secret Service did not much care. We don't have any telepathic insight into the mindset in order to say that, but you can tell by what they did. 5 weeks later, on August 25th, this same guy, who they had been warned about by the Virginia State Police, the one with all the guns and the map of the White House, he turned up armed at the White House. The Virginia State Police had taken all of his guns in his earlier arrest, but when he showed up at the White House on August 25th, he had an axe. He had a hatchet stuffed into the waistband of his trousers. It was noticeable enough that the Secret Service stopped him outside of the White House and questioned him. They interacted with him long enough to question him about the weapon he was plainly carrying at the White House. They also went with him to his vehicle, which was parked nearby, and secured his permission to search through his vehicle. So it wasn't just like a, hey, buddy, get out of here kind of interaction. They had a significant exchange with him over a significant amount of time. But apparently, even with that, nothing popped for the Secret Service about this guy they'd been warned about. And so then the guy came back again 2 weeks later. And this time he had 800 rounds of ammunition in his vehicle. He had not 1 hatchet like he had before, but 2 hatchets. Also, he had a machete all in his vehicle. Plus, he had a knife in his pocket. And this time, he did not just walk back and forth in front of the White House fence. This time, he jumped over the White House fence. Now, turns out a lot of people jump over the White House fence. It's weird and seems very dangerous, but it happens more often than you might think. It seems like every couple of weeks, on average, somebody is jumping over the White House fence these days. But with 42-year-old Omar Gonzalez, it was different because he not only got over the White House fence, when he landed on the South Lawn, nobody tackled him. You can see him here in this spot shadow. Watch this. See? There he is. Nobody tackled him. Nobody used a weapon on him. Nobody let a dog go to go chase after him. He hit the ground running on the South Lawn. He ran all the way across the South Lawn. He made it all the way to the north portico of the White House. And then what we reported a week ago tonight was that he made it just inside the doors of the north portico in the White House before he was tackled by the Secret Service. And before today, that's what had been reported. Right? As alarming as it was that this guy got inside the White House, he only just got inside the White House. He was tackled as soon as he went inside those north portico doors. That's what we knew before tonight. Now, it turns out, the Washington Post is first to report that the man was not tackled as soon as he entered the north portico doors of the White House. He made it quite a bit farther than that. Now, if you're not an architect or used to looking at plans, or if you're just not visually minded like me, it can be a little hard to visualize the interior of somebody's house, particularly when it's a big, oversized, historic, fancy house. So I'm going to show this two ways. This is an architectural cutaway of the first floor of the White House. This is from the White House Historical Association. If you want to look at it on this map, these cut-off pillars over here, those represent the north portico where the guy entered the White House. And in the initial version of this story, when Omar Gonzalez was tackled just inside the doors of the north portico, that would have meant that he ran inside that door there and was tackled just inside that door, just inside the White House, roughly right around where that circle is. Well, today we learned that that is not at all where Omar Gonzalez was tackled. Instead, he overpowered a Secret Service agent who was standing there when he got there. The Secret Service agent was not able to take him down. He then kept running. He ran this way to his left down a short of hallway. We'll get back to that in a moment. He entered this large room here called the East Room, which runs the full width of the White House. And then he was sprinting down the East Room and sprinting toward, and by some accounts, trying to get into the next room in the mansion, which is called the Green Room. When he was finally taken down, it was somewhere in the vicinity of that circle there. So that's one way to see what happened here, using this architecturally accurate cutaway from the White House Historical Association. It's actually a little easier to see if you use this map that was mocked up by kind of an unofficial White House fan site. This is just easier to see. We've linked to this at mattoblog.com tonight if you want to see this unofficial but very clear map that shows you exactly what happened. So in this case, get oriented a little bit. You see the north porticos at the top? This shows the whole first floor in a handy, color-coded, easy-to-see way. See the north portico entrance at the top of the map through which Omar Gonzalez ran into the White House. And again, the initial story was that he made it just inside the doors of the north portico before he was taken down by the Secret Service just inside that entrance hall. We have now learned today that that did not happen. Instead, he overpowered a Secret Service agent there and then ran through that short hallway into the giant East Room, which is the whole one side of the White House. He then ran the length of the whole building through the East Room and then finally was tackled somewhere in the vicinity of being about to enter the Green Room. Now, what's very helpful about this view is this. Remember I mentioned that short little hallway that he ran through right after he went through the entrance hall? Look at that. In order to get there from that front entrance door into the East Room, what is that thing that he's running through right there? You see, it's been sort of marked with a tearaway, and it's a couple of different colors. They're trying to give you the impression there that you're looking at two different floors, because what he was running through right there was actually the landing for the staircase that goes up to the second floor of the White House. He did not choose to run upstairs. He kept going. He could have chosen instead to run upstairs to the second floor of the White House instead of what he did, which was continue through to the East Room. Had he run upstairs instead, this is where he would have been. This is the second floor of that same building. You see the labels there? How it says bedroom, 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 bedroom? Those are the bedrooms and private quarters of President Obama and his family. I have been to the White House for Christmas parties and stuff, and occasionally meetings with White House officials. You get to see all the stuff on the first floor, the East Room, the Green Room, the Blue Room, all that other stuff, depending on what you're there for. Nobody gets to see the upstairs part of it because this is private. This is where the president and his family live, and Omar Gonzalez was right there on the landing of their stairs. As far as we know, he chose not to run upstairs. But the way information has been trickling out about this very disturbing incident with the armed man who made it that far into the White House, who knows what we'll find out in another few days. Carol Leonnig is the Washington Post reporter who first broke this news today about exactly how terrible the security breach was when Omar Gonzalez and his knife were able to get that far into the White House. This weekend, Carol Leonnig at the Washington Post had another scoop about the Secret Service and the White House, which in some ways was even more difficult to believe. I mean, which is worse? Being able to run all the way inside the White House, almost the entire way to the president's private residence with a knife on you? Or firing 7 bullets into the walls and windows of the Obama family's private residence at the White House and the Secret Service not noticing that you did it for days? Because the same Secret Service had that problem, too. November 11th, 2011, it was a Friday night. It was around 8:50 p.m. We just saw some interior views of the White House. Here's the White House on a map. For reference, the place where the fence jumper jumped over the fence and ran at the White House, Omar Gonzalez, the guy who made it inside, he came from the Pennsylvania Avenue side, up on top of the White House there. That's where the decorative fence is that so many people have jumped over. This other incident in 2011 did not happen from that side of the White House. It happened from the other side of the White House and from much further away. So you see Pennsylvania Avenue here. Then below the White House, you see there's E Street. Then there's something called the Ellipse. And on the far side of that is a big, heavily trafficked road in Washington, D.C. that's called Constitution Avenue. And at about 8:50 p.m. on the night of November 11th, 2011, a young man pulled his car over on Constitution Avenue. From this distance, he was about 6 football fields away, about 700 yards from the White House. He pulled over in a black Honda sedan, and he pulled out his Romanian-made AK-47 knockoff, and he fired that gun multiple times at the White House. After shooting into the White House, he sped off down Constitution Avenue. He did not make it very far before he crashed his car. He left the gun and 180 rounds of ammunition and all the spent shell casings in the vehicle. He left the door open and the headlights on, and he took off running. And they did not catch him for 6 days. And that's in part because the Secret Service took 4 days to realize that the dude had actually shot the White House. There were 2 Secret Service agents on the roof as the building was being shot at, and they reacted as if shots had been fired at the White House. There were 2 more Secret Service agents in a vehicle right near Constitution Avenue and the Ellipse, which is where the shooter fired from. Reportedly, those officers not only heard the shots and thought they were hearing gunfire, but they actually smelled the gunpowder in the air. They were that nearby. And yet another Secret Service officer was stationed right next to the White House, right underneath the Truman balcony. And she not only reacted to hearing gunfire, but she heard the shots hit the building and saw debris fall from the building where it had been hit. But somehow, despite all of that from their own people, the Secret Service's initial conclusion from some still as yet unidentified supervisor was that no shots were fired. Those weren't gunshots. It must have been backfiring from a nearby construction vehicle. Then the Secret Service revised that initial assessment and decided, well, okay, gunshots have been fired, but it had nothing to do with the White House. Must have been 2 people in random cars shooting at each other somewhere in the neighborhood. Perhaps rival gangs? This happened on a Friday night in November 2011. Friday. It was not until the following Tuesday when a housekeeper at the White House found a chunk of concrete and some broken glass inside the first family's residence on the 2nd floor of the White House. And other White House staff then started to find the bullet holes. It was not until then that the Secret Service finally could be persuaded that, hey, maybe it's worth looking around here. And yeah, somebody had not only shot at the White House, but somebody had hit the White House with high-powered rifle fire 7 times. And so that is when the Secret Service began their investigation, including, for the first time, 4 days after, interviewing their own officers who had been on duty that night, who had thought and reported that it was gunfire. It was only then that they decided that maybe it would be a good idea to put out an APB for the man who had abandoned that Honda sedan with the just-fired assault weapon and the empty shell casings all over it a couple of blocks from the White House the night all those Secret Service officers heard and smelled gunfire. They finally put out an APB for him in the middle of the following week. It took him a day to pick him up. They charged him with trying to assassinate President Obama. In April, he was sentenced to 25 years in prison. Without the housekeeper finding and reporting the damage, dude would presumably still be out there, maybe making another plan to try again. In both of these incidences, neither of the guys appears to have been a real genius. Neither of them appears to have been working with a larger group of people or as part of some more complicated plot. What one of them got away with for almost a week, and the other one got away with all the way through to the end of the East Room as he was trying to get into the Green Room, what they got away with? In both cases, neither of these things seem all that hard to pull off or all that complicated to arrange. Being able to do that much damage and get that close is not supposed to happen. What's the matter with the Secret Service? Was something always wrong with the Secret Service and we're just hearing about it now from reporters like Carol Leonnig who were able to find out about this stuff? Was this stuff always happening before and we never knew about it? Or is something wrong with the Secret Service now that was never wrong with them before? Is this as bad as it seems? Because it seems terrible. And regardless of whether or not this is new or whether this is an old problem, how quickly can this be fixed? Carol Leonnig, the reporter who broke these stories, joins us next.